Hello everyone, match number 2 of the Overwatch League, and it's the Summer Showdown debut. We got 2 returning teams, of course. New York Excelsior versus the Houston Outlaws. We got 2 returning casters, Leg Day and myself. But everyone get your waves in, because we're welcoming 3 new players to the league, and also they're debuting today. We got Lep, we got Doge, and Ansoonjae. I'm excited to see them play today.
Yeah, 2 on the Houston Outlaws and 1 on the New York Excelsior. Lemon, Danny might be 50% worried about the London Spitfire, but I'm 100% pumped up for this match. It's going to be our first time casting Jotes, Junker Goats, because it's a speedy Junker Queen. I like to call it Lightning McQueen, but that probably went past legal, so...
Too late.
Yeah, you know, we get the one. Let's... think about who's come into these rosters, because both of these teams have made the same move to address the same weakness, and that's that both of these rosters came in with more flex supports and no main supports, and that's why Doge and Lep have been brought in. Lep in particular is coming in to play the main support through his career in contenders that we've cast a good amount of. Lemon, Lep has played a really good Lucio, some Brig, and some Mercy, so he's a career main support. And the question is, alongside Lastro, are they going to allow Lastro to play on the Lucio when Lep might actually be a little bit better at that hero, but Lastro's had the expertise in it from the first stage of a tournament, and put Lep on the Brigitte? Or are they going to move Lastro over to the Brig and have him learn another main support while Lep plays his best hero on the Lucio?
I'm thinking Lep is, you know, we had some kind of pro or throw segment on the desk. I'm thinking professional skater boy Lep, and I'll call it here. Doge will also be premiering in this match, and I know a good bit about him. He's a main tank stemming from Europe, really known for his Winston and Hammond, and he's been trialing actually for a few teams, but finally has made it past the whole visa hurdle that a lot of the European players are suffering through. And what's interesting is hearing from the Houston Outlaws that Doge and Dante will actually be trading off on Junker Queen duties, and I really love this, especially for Doge, who's new to the league, you know, can kind of acclimate slowly and not just have a ton of playtime on his shoulders and just have all the stress. So Dante and Doge will be trading off on the Junker Queen. And more about Doge, he's an extremely vocal player, so if he gets subbed out or subbed in for Dante, you're not going to lose that natural leadership that you need in these fights.
On the other side, we have the New York Excelsior, Lemon, a team that is, let's say, languishing in Overwatch League 2022, but some injection of both new and old blood might change the fortunes for this team. The coaching staff has been shuffled around a little bit, but on your screens right now, you can see Ansoonjae has been added to this roster. Another main support player had a pretty successful run over in Korean contenders A-sides just recently, I believe, with Talon getting 2nd place. So Ansoonjae has played against some tough competition in this meta already, and may bring some of that understanding to the team pre-packaged.
And, you know, there's a lot of fires or maybe some red flags going on. I mean, we have to talk about the elephant of the room. New York releasing their head coach. And this is, you know, Kuki being a player all the way back from the Apex days, has that Overwatch League experience. Now it's only Undine and Gesture who are leading that, who were formerly assistant coaches. So it's not clear on whether the release is because of the results or maybe Kuki's going for another career. But New York, this meta, you gotta trust it. Yaki and Flora were already playing Genji and Sojourn at the end of mid-season madness. They've had an extended break because they're not qualifying for tournaments, but because the Summer Showdown is independent. Now, whatever your results that you had in previous tournaments or previous regular season, it only matters how you do in these qualifiers for the Summer Showdown. So this is a fresh slate for New York to play off of, and maybe a meta that can suit them now that they've had so much extra time to learn it.
You're exactly right, Lemon, and getting into the Summer Showdown for New York Excelsior is going to be incredibly important, because they're also looking towards the end of the season and those play-ins to get into our overall playoffs and championship. And honestly, 1-11 is not going to cut it if you want to try and make it into our Countdown Cup. Here's a quick look at our map pool. Nepal has entered today. It's going to be our first Nepal of Overwatch League 2022, but I think we all know what we're planning to expect here. It is, of course, going to be the Junker Queen and the Lucio, and when I say that, because both Junker Queen and Lucio have their own speed boost for the team, 30% speed boost by default, and then going upwards, I believe, when amped it up for Lucio, and 30% from a commanding shot of a Junker Queen. And on control, it's incredibly important to use those speed boosts to get the better position for the first fight.
And this is kind of already elaborated on this meta already, but we call it Jodes or Goats because now you have 3 healing sources, the Lucio, the Brig. Now, an important job for the supports is the double boop. You need to use that flail shot if you're the Brigitte, which is going to be owned by Lastro. Remember, we had kind of a discussion on whether Lep or Lastro were going to pick that up. So the flail to create that distance between themselves and the Junker Queen. Keep in mind, viewers at home, the timing of the shout will define how you engage, how you disengage, and who is the better resources later on in the fight.
Oh, I like NYXL rolling out with the Symmetra. That might be some of the Ansem J expertise. Now they have control of the high ground, and they won't have to expend the Junker Queen shout to get up onto there. Kellen gets hit with the knife, however, good cover from the wall means that he's not pulled too far into the midst of the Houston Outlaws, as Lep is waiting up here for potentially an engage from the NYXL that could be booped into the pit for those instant frags.
And a lot about Lep's playstyle. He's not afraid to wall ride and assassinate, be aggressive, but he's also not dumb. He knows how to take these matches seriously. He puts 200% in, and here is the shout from the Houston Outlaws, and almost a good boop opportunity for Lep, as New York are on this kind of gazebo, and this is so dangerous for the supports. I mean, Gangnam Jin and Lastro are dead. Doge is off the map. Only a tank remaining for the New York Excelsior, as now they're just cleaning up the fight, and they get to go cap the point.
Yeah, Doge ending up off the map, not ideal, and of course Yaki there getting multiple kills. We saw in the previous game with a Florida Mayhem from Checkmate that a good Genji can be everything in these fights, and well, when you're looking for Genjis, Yaki, let's say, has outperformed his team in terms of how well he's been playing that hero. Kellen playing up close for an early engage, but this does bear the risk of getting knocked off.
This is very risky for Kellen. I mean, he dropped down to half health, but Houston just didn't want to engage off of that with all 5 members around the corner. They decide to now push through pillars, and Doge has already led the charge and found Gangnam Jin while Kellen wasn't there to protect him. So a dangerous kind of off-angle push from the New York Excelsior when you kind of want to play this as a death ball, as a unit. Now Kellen is separated away from his support, so Houston isolate, conquer, and move on.
Yeah, and isolations, those are so easy to overwhelm when you can move as a group here. Houston now also take control of a point, and Gangnam Jin there being the first death is something that we're going to see a lot in this meta. I mean, you want to focus the Brigitte because she's the only person who can't get the burst healer for a repair pack. She can't give those to herself, and therefore she's the easiest target to rush down.
Now we get a Dragon Blade from Yaki. Usually want to save that sound barrier to counter the opposing Dragon Blade, but it wouldn't hurt to have that extra sustain. About when does Yaki want to find an opportunity, especially after the shout, but the shout's been used by Doge. Here's the rally from Lastro. Houston push into New York, but it's the sound bear at the last second from Onsu J that gives New York a breath of fresh air as Yaki's blade is finally slicing through all the extra health, and New York come out ahead once all the resources of the Houston Outlaws have been expended.
That was a huge blade from Yaki to force out the sound barrier from Lep. Once that wasn't available to counter the Rampage, Killen didn't mind investing further in this fight. But we need to see New York Excelsior iterate on their previous defense here, because in the last fight, Kellen was isolated alone, and then when he had to disengage, Gangnam Jin was an easy target for a speed-boosting Outlaws.
Kellen loves being in these corners by himself, but he had the rally of Gangnam Jin, and Houston just used the shout to disengage, maybe looking for a knife pull here from Doge. So really the big kickstarters to these fights is whether a Sojourn pick or a great knife pull from the Junker Queen. So you have an overclock here from Floor on the pillar side. Houston just decided to hide away from it. Pretty smart. Merit exchanged that too. No picks so far. So much healing means it takes so long to have that first pick happen. Here comes Houston Outlaws pushing for pillar control. Left has already double booped and even killed Gangnam Jin. How do New York even pull this through? Well, the job is mostly done. They've got to 95%, so New York just have to reset.
They never had any chance. I've got the power of God, anime, and NA contenders on my side. Lep with the double kill, picking up Kellen, and then another is huge for this Lucio. And we're going to see later on in the day as well with Funny Astro just how much an aggressive Lucio can bring to your team in this particular meta, because you get yourself essentially another DPS. Huge Rampage.
That's a mega rampage. All 4 members of the New York Excelsior, and Doge follows up. He's on fire already. And this is also keeping in mind that Doge is playing from Europe, so the ping not favoring him a whole lot. 3 digits is pretty hard when you're trying to aim that knife. But for now, 70% for the Outlaws. Maybe coming down to last fight soon.
What needs to happen here is that ideally Outlaws need to try and survive Yaki's blade with only the rally from Lastro. Lep needs to hold on to his sound barrier to counter out Kellen's rampage, which is going to be the last chance saloon for NYXL to turn this around again as Yaki looks to find a place with his blade.
Yeah, Shadow's already been used by Doge. Sound barrier by Lep doesn't hit Pelican. Does Yaki even find him through all the smoke and the fire and the flames? Now the shout and the sound barrier from Outlaws to counteract. New York Excelsior used their own sound barrier late. Ansu-J has had perfect timing with these so far, but New York, can they coalesce with the damage? Because there's so much healing, you have to focus. There is no excuse. Sojourn's eliminated from both sides. Pelican, time to use the blade, but he's looking for this Brigida, gets Bash, an anti from the rampage, and he's somehow still living with 1 HP. Are you kidding me? Grabs the Mega, he'll be back soon, but a 1v3, even Pelican can't do that. 99% overtime started for New York. They just have to deal with Merit Sojourn, who wants to drop through the closet to touch, but was so focused on dealing with Yaki, forgot about the objective, so New York will take round 1.
That was by the skin of their teeth, Lemon. Kellen almost didn't get the rampage in time. That was a very low damage fight for Kellen somehow. Just struggled to get that last 10% that was needed, but luckily he managed to actually roll a counter dive on Pelican after bringing that blade out and directly impacting on the blade. Of course, the commanding shout gave over additional HP, which allowed him to survive a little while longer. Still, he dies in the end. Houston Outlaws swapping it up here. Admittedly, maybe it's only going to be a rollout for the sim and maybe not sticking on it, but the May, I imagine, is here to stay, because that means you can try and force fights on the point with an advantage for your own Junker Queen.
And these fights are just not decisive at all. I mean, it's just been so close. I think the closest one was, or the most decisive one was when Leb had the double kill. And kind of New York's approach to this comp is so interesting with Kellen taking these off angles, but it's headbutt to headbutt, and Kellen drops so dangerously low, uses the shout, gets all the packs in the world from Gangnam Jin, but it's not enough. And without a tank, New York just have to hope that they either somehow get a trading pig onto Flora, or with using Flora, and Yaki with a good follow-up. But with 3 sources of healing, like I said, from Houston, it's New York just having to hang out and wait for Kellen to get back.
Dojo's out self-healing as well, so not as worried about Lastro not being particularly present. Also, we've got to think about the double slow from a Disruptor and the Cryo Beam from a May to control these engagements.
Yeah, I like the Disruptor shot used to protect the supports. New York kept Kellen back and just couldn't get a good fight as soon as Flora dropped. It's a good headshot from the Outlaws. Now they can kind of just chill for now and figure out, are New York pushing high ground, or are they going to go straight to point?
In Overwatch 2 as well, May's primary fire, when it pierces people and does an instant 50% slow, does 100 DPS, which is a huge amount of healing to cut off from the NYXL.
Oh, the May wall gets immediately broken down. And yeah, I feel like most of May's value is when you can get really close, because even through all the icicles, like you said, you're going to get healed up, but this off-angle push might not be it. Pelican walls himself up, but he's still dead. He might have had the dagger still in him. Now Houston Outlaws in a 4v5. They head back to the point to see how long they can survive. They have control of the point so they can extend the lead that they do have. Now with Junker Queen, the Junker Queen. Looks like New York have made a bit of space to start to flip over the objective, but Houston can go and stall at any point. They have the left sound barrier, and maybe Merritt is back. He is. So Houston, or Pelican may be back soon, and he just got back. But as soon as he got back, Doge dies. So Houston lose their chance to re-engage.
Yeah, it might be there that Houston actually should have used the speed they had from Lep a little bit more. With Ansun-J being down, Houston Outlaws could definitely control that engagement much better than NYXL could. But instead, they were playing a little bit more passively, waiting for Pelican to come back, hoping they could just squeeze out a few more percentage points. In the end, though, it just allows for New York Excelsior to get a little bit more poked, bring out that rally, which is now going to be a huge advantage for Lastro to have that at his beck and call. And once again, Lastro needs to try and keep his team alive with only the rally against the plate.
Oh, Kellen is by himself. He uses the shout, and Ansu-J might have to think about this barrier soon, and he does. Drops it in time for not only the Blizzard of Pelican, but the other wave of support ultimates from the Houston Outlaws. The resources are now draining, and the Outlaws have only got 2 kills, but it surely is enough. The shout back online will help just get that extra speed to close the gap between themselves and the rest of the remnants of the Excelsior who head back. Houston get the flip.
One of the things about using that blade is that you're often going to try and buff it up with a commanding shot as well, Lemon, for that additional 100 health and the speed boost. And that means that after Kellen moves to keep Yaki at his finest with the blade, he's much more vulnerable to being caught in something like the Blizzard from Pelican. And then you've got no tank to try and help you hold that space. Houston Outlaws are going to defend the chokes, but Lastro's low.
Oh, Lastro is low. The Rampage, though, was thrown out by Doge to kind of create this distraction. Kellen immediately falls. It's just an 8% difference there, and just taking out Kellen could mean the round win. And the third one being forced. Excelsior gonna wait for Kellen to get back, and the Rampage will be the win condition. They'll have to start thinking about who's gonna touch. It'll be on Sunjae, who should be on the job, and Yaki is there too. So overtime has been started. Excelsior taking the fight outside the objective, and Kellen doesn't even get to use Rampage, and Flora dies too. Houston took the initiative, and it paid off. 5 versus 3, no ults for the Excelsior, and no one there to touch. We're going to round 3.
So no Rampage? That was a simple calculus of Houston Outlaws. They heard the jumping and the climbing of the Genji, the best player on the New York Excelsior, some would say, and Yaki is busy touching the point so they don't lose the round. So if there are 4 people over there, we can just run into them, right? And then Yaki's going to have to stay on that point until it flips over as to not throw the game away. And finding that 4 versus 5 there, Houston Outlaws deciding not to play it on the point was imperative. A very good decision made in the moment, especially considering that Doge and Lep on main tank and main support, 2 roles have often been conflated very precisely with the calls and the overall plans are identifying these weaknesses quickly.
Lep just said, look what the other Owl players taught me, to just spam C9 every time you win a round. But round 3 decided here on Shrine. Doge and friends already on the point. Now the issue with this is that usually on a point like this, you can kind of surround it, but in a sense of this composition, you want to play it as a death ball, but New York are a bit away from that. Kellen is the one taking initiative, but Flora is the one who gets the headshots. Doge is already half health and can't really depend on the lack of damage that exists, and there's no one to really speed him out, and he can't shout his way out of this either. So New York, off of that first few picks, look at the point.
And this is a good point for us to talk about the Sojourn versus Ashe dichotomy, right? Like on one side, we have the Ashe who's got yet another knockback. That's 3 knockbacks or 4 that's on NYXL's team between the support and the Ashe. And also, most importantly, Ashe delivers instant damage the second that she ADSs. Whereas for Sojourn, it's a little bit more of a warm-up, and it means the damage can't instantly be given over for an engagement. Or that.
And that's the first pick for Houston. And it really sometimes comes down to these fights starting off with either the Ashe or the Sojourn doing just that. And I think New York, when they started on the point, or when Houston started off the point, they didn't have any cover. So that's how New York got the point first. And now the opposite just happened. Houston snuck up on them, got that first pick, and just got the charge into them off of that great window of opportunity created. So Houston back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I think maybe a couple of poor comms there from NYXL as well as to where Houston Outlaws were going to try and break out of that choke, because I think that Callum was actually firing into it and might not have been fed back to Flora, but people were actually leaving, didn't get time to use the back blast from the coach gun. Now Houston Outlaws, they have a blade, and there's nothing really to try and directly deal with it. Pelican's just going to have to be burned through by NYXL.
Yeah, we'll see if they even know Pelican has it. Pelicans playing on this off angle. Yaki keeping him in check. The shout starts for Kellen, but Doge gets help from the rally of Lastro. Now the Pelican blade goes after Kellen. And that's just all she wrote. 3 kills after that, and Houston get to clean things up and extend the lead that they have.
Great flank there as well from Merritt to go down main and try and cut off those who are disengaging in that direction, so you can get those other kills, force more staggers, and squeeze them for further ult charge. Still, NYXL, they're about to hit their power spike, Lemon. 4 ultimates are going to be available, and Lep is still a couple of very important percentage points away from the sound barrier.
Yeah, I think New York have the advantage here. They have the rally, the speed starts. Lastro identified. Doge soon to be taken out, and the Bob, the 6th player on the field, makes this fight look easy for New York, who haven't lost a single player. Of course, you got Bob plus Florida in the middle of the field. Houston just picked away like ducks.
Okay, so it looked weird there that it seemed like Flora was coach gunning into the Houston Outlaws, but what they were pulling off there on NYXL was actually a bait and switch, with Flora having the Bob to be able to peel for himself after Houston Outlaws roll into him, and NYXL run through mid afterwards and hit Houston Outlaws in the back after they've already used their speed boost from Rochelle.
I guess Houston came out a little too quickly and just got shot down by not only Flora, but this 3K blade. So I'm down for this. I think with this fight win too, this will get New York Excelsior either back in the lead or close to tying it up.
This is one of the most back-and-forth professional control maps I have ever seen, Lemon. We rarely see control maps swap around as much as they currently are. Houston Outlaws now, they've got to be very economical with their resources as they try and move into NYXL's zone of control, especially when trying to avoid this dynamite from Flora. They need to note the position of this Ashe.
Okay, they see Yaki above them. The rampage from Kellen hits left, Blastro and Doge. Down there from left will give some more cushion. It's a wave of damage from New York after they shouted and engaged. Now here's the backclap. Outlaws have the overclock from Mara. They have control, or at least they're on the point. Control soon to be flipped over. And New York really don't have enough members to keep this going. They only have 3 up, and they lost Ansoon J pretty late in that fight. So no speed engage or disengage. So Outlaws might want to farm this because they have that utility still available. They picked off Kellen and they almost went for the spawns. Houston, let's see if they bought enough time to steal away this round.
And I think that Ansoon J, they actually used the sound barrier in the engagement of Kellen, so it wasn't available to counter Doge, and now it's not available to counter Pelican either. Pelican has this entire map in his hands with this blade. All he needs to do is find a squishy target.
Oh, last second touch from Yaki, and he lives through the blade into the back line, immediately slices down on him. Jaden goes after Kellen. He's below half health. He doesn't have shout, and Ansoon J is off into the shadows. He's dealing with bigger and better fish on the other side. 99% for the Houston Outlaws in round 3. It doesn't get any more back and forth than this, but the finish line has been crossed, and the Houston Outlaws will get map 1.
Despite a promising start for the New York Excelsior and a hard-fought map, in the end, when the cards are down, the ante has been raised for the Houston Outlaws, and it seems like there is a great understanding of how this meta works from both of these teams, which means that this is going to be a very exciting series, and we're seeing these stylistic differences in some teams who prefer the Ashe for the instant damage that it delivers, and others who prefer the utility of the Sojourn. In particular, that Disruptor field is of amazing value against teams that not only rely on speed, but have to clump together to make use of it from those auras.
And especially just the dynamite is so underrated of how you can even get these targets low enough where your Genji can get dash resets. So Houston tried to be creative, putting Pelican on the Mei and trying some new things. We even saw some wacky things in the last series. But map number 2 will be Midtown, and we'll see what else we got in store.
Please don't let me in.
Please don't let me into my zone. I just need some time on my own. All these people trying to get a conversation. You can conversate to that tone. My gut eye on that throne, yeah. So I'm never alone, yeah. All these people trying to box me in. I'm at my weather, it's on, yeah. Now they ask where I'm at. Making hits that line back. I'm MJ, I'm 2-3, man. I just need some time back. I'm zoned in like defense. My life gone, no recess. But I live my best one, so I got no regrets. So I'm gone. Finally back in my home. I'm working like so much. They swear I had me a clone. Can't answer my phone now. Just leave it there, that tone. Ballin' can't beat me up, cause I'm back in my zone now.
Well, the Outlaws, well, the showdown has arrived and the Outlaws take map 1. Feeling pretty good though. Went all the way to round 3. 99-99 almost across the board. I gotta say, this is a close match. It has to be. And the fact that New York, like before the Summer Showdown, started off kind of 1-11 in the season, this is a breath of fresh air to see New York in this state.
Yeah, New York, they needed it to swap right now, Lemon, when it comes to their in-season performance, because honestly, after mid-season madness, they're running out of time to get into our end-of-season playoffs. Of course, being a solo tournament, the Summer Showdown, it's all about what happens in the next 6 matches for each one of these teams, and getting into that tournament will give you bonus points towards getting into the Countdown Cup and the playoffs afterwards. So, it's all to play for New York Excelsior. Next up, we're going to be heading to Midtown, which is going to be an area with some interesting high grounds that can be abused. We've seen different approaches defensively to this area before, where even when he's been out of the overall meta, Sigma's kind of persisted, kind of like how he did over on Circuit Royale. Here, though, it seems that both of these teams have been putting a good amount of mental preparation into the Junker Queen rush, and so it's likely they're going to be sticking with that, especially with newer players that haven't had the time in scrims, presumably, to really deepen the breadth of compositions.
Yeah, most of this map is very medium range. There's like some important high grounds like that bridge past the point, but it's just relatively flat and you can ignore the high grounds. They're not as super dominant. So I think this would bode well for this composition. It's not as like egregious as like a Dorado high ground or a Hollywood high ground. But I'm excited to see also how teams are going to approach Paraiso, which we're going to see in our next series. But we'll be the Outlaws on the attack, who are kind of toying with us on what composition they're going to run. But even from the interviews we heard in the previous series, pretty much everyone is running this Junker Queen composition. The only big variations you're seeing is in support line, or, you know, and for the first match, some people are experimenting. But psych, we're back. It's a Junker Queen comp.
Alright, Merit was also going to leave a Sojourn behind this time and go for the instant damage that's offered by the Ashe, as well as the Dynamite for that huge amount of AoE damage. Kellen actually gets knifed and dragged in.
Oh, it looks like he's fine for now. It looks like New York pushed the right side after they got dynamited, and Houston taking shelter in this left building. Doge half health, helping farm up some support. Ult charge. New York starting to surround the fire truck, and Houston aren't very decisive on where they want to push. They have building control, like the left building, and then you see Pelican go on the right, and it's like they know New York are playing kind of isolated apart, and Houston are so good at punishing this. And I kind of spoke to you at the break leg day about how it feels like Kellen and Friends of New York are playing this like a Doomfist comp, because they're not playing it as clumped up as we expected.
Yeah, they're playing it a little bit further apart, and that also means that Pelican can try and find isolated 1v1s on these targets as well by being given either a commanding shout for the additional health or an armor pack before he makes these leaps. And one of the things that I want you all to keep an eye on is how Kellen takes these engagements, because if he tries to play corners, that could be very resource intensive.
That was already a first shout from New York. I don't think Houston used theirs. And so quick, it's like you gotta spot the green bars on the top UI and then the screaming lady with the axe. So Houston Outlaws just get some free cart push, and I think once the cart gets close to that underarch, they can either follow it through under the tunnel, which you kind of see that style of rush played on a Gibraltar when you push it through car wash, but the double headshot from Merit, that'll be the Kickstarter. Now New York on the bridge, they know this push could be coming. They already used the speed of Ansunjae and maybe even a shout from Kellen to get out. So free bridge control for the Outlaws after a great pick from Merit.
Yeah, there's a name for that in the scientific community. We call those just Merit things. And sometimes you just hit a double headshot, and that's all that she wrote. Ansunjae does have the barrier here, but likely wants to try and save it either for a blade or for a rampage coming from Doge.
Okay, Yaki got to dash through. I'm not sure if he's going to get away with that, but the Sound Bear will help New York stay anchored in this fight as Houston tried to break out of it with a bomb place at the end of the point. Blade from Pelican as he got some targets low in the back line. No supports for this defense, and Yaki can just wave goodbye. See you later, bud. And Houston Outlaws just sailing away to point B. Unstoppable so far.
Oh, a yummy little bowl of my favorite breakfast cereal. Oops, all L's, because Jet using the sound barrier in that previous fight is absolutely terrible for the rest of the defense here for NYXL, because now they don't have anything to answer for Rampage either. Gangnam's just going to have to try and do it with the rally, but honestly, the rally, that'll get burned away easily by a Dynamite. If Doge and Merritt can just coalesce the Dynamite and Rampage into one angle and hit one or two people, NYXL are going to fall apart.
I like that New York just kind of were very careful on how they left spawn, because when Ansunjae got staggered, the lack of a Lucio gives the other team, who has the speed and the utility, such a huge advantage. So they shy away. Houston didn't want to get overly aggro. They're happy with the pick they got onto Ansunjae. They got around the corner of point C. It's almost a 5-minute timer, and a Rampage starts from Doge. 4 is low! No bomb for him! Ansunjae gone 2 of 5, or 4 on 3 actually for the Outlaws. The Sound Bear versus the Rally, counter Rampage, and the Dragon Blade for New York, but where are the kills? Spot check. They're only coming in now once Outlaws have run out of healing, and they're going to be running out of Lastro too. See you later.
That's a good plan for NYXL there as well, to bring out the sound barrier from Let first, using the Dragon Blade without too much behind it. Let panics a little bit, think of it, he's going to die, and then Kellen afterwards can sweep through everyone when there's no real way to save them, because Lep and Astra, all they can do is stare, and I think Doge has already used his commanding shout as well, so there was no overhealth to try and cushion that inevitable bleed.
Oh, the bob from the off ankle from the defense. I'm loving this. Now he can shy away, and Outlaws have to deal with the bob, but as New York were disengaging from this weird flank, they lost Gangnam Jin, so Outlaws kind of realizing this advantage are going to be super aggressive on this push. Pelican has the blade. You got the rally from Lastro, and this is the time where Houston, they can either anchor on cart and remove space that New York have naturally because of the objective, or they can take the fight now. The shout already starts from Doge. You got the rally from Lastro. You got kind of a Yaki in your back line, but it's not bothering you too much. Here's the play from Pelican. Finds its supports at the archway. But New York never touched. Are you serious?
Ooh. That's 4 question marks for me about New York Excelsior. Damn, that's not great. However, one of the things that was really cool there that we saw Pelican looking out for is that in New York Excelsior, they used Kellen's aggression with his own shout to try and force, used their own aggression with Doge's commanding shout to force a counter shout out of Kellen, knowing that that burst temporary health that the shout gives would have been one of the best ways to try and counter Pelican's unamplified blade when NYXL did not have the ultimates to try and deal with it. So Houston Outlaws, they are very thoroughly considering their win conditions here, and they are playing to them well.
And when it comes to just these death balls, it's really important to study and understand the macros, so the rotations. The fact that Houston were never overly aggressive. They pushed, but just measured enough where they're not entering dangerous territory where the defense have better cover, better positioning, better high ground, stuff like that. Like whether it was Houston not extending past the point B wall to Houston after they picked Ansunjae, they kind of just peeked around the corner, saw New York wasn't there, and then didn't want to go exploring and finding out. And then even just pushing the card at the end instead of taking the 5-on-4. Outlaws are taking calculated risks, and it's paying off. I mean, look at that, a 3-minute 20 timer. That has to be one of the best.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best we've ever seen on this map. That's unbelievably fast for Midtown. For New York Excelsior, I'd love to see them target Lastro a little bit more, because we talked earlier about how the Brig is the easiest kill in this composition because she's the only one who can't receive a repair pack. Pelican actually might be in no man's land here, but should be an easy enough escape.
And I think New York last time they were on this point, I mean, they got punished because of kind of their individual play styles. They're just all playing isolated, right? But Houston, they're playing as a unit. And New York, I think, are taking a page out of that book. They're trying to do kind of your usual rush rotations through the left alleyway, through maybe just through the middle of the map. And Houston are on their tail and have already caught up to Yaki. So 5-on-4, how did New York put out this fire? They're in the laundry map, but they're the ones getting washed right now. And Houston are just continuously chasing them, cycling through the Lucio speed, the shout from Doge, the fact that you have 2 rookie players on this team, and it's playing almost to perfection on a comp that you need to communicate and be on the same page. Houston are looking really good to start off their first match of the Summer Showdown.
Yeah, element of a cycle's real good of a laundromat every time. We call that one a spin cycle. Houston Outlaws here, they are doing a really good job of just messing with NYXL as they're trying to make moves. Yaki's almost playing a individualistic playstyle here, which is getting very thoroughly punished. Yaki might actually catch Pelican in here, but saving the dash doesn't matter. You aren't faster than Flora's bullet.
Caught him lacking. Now it's gonna go and push into him even more. He can just focus on the objective. Either or is a W in the New York Excelsior's book, and they got support ultimates if things don't go well. Great first pick by Flora, especially when they kind of baited Houston Outlaws. They thought they were going into laundromat, thought maybe Houston were going to come out, then they hit the headshot. There's the rally from Lastro, sound barrier from Ansun J, the shout from Houston Outlaws. Lep will have the sound barrier late if he can live long enough to do it, but no one's really focusing the same target, so no one is dying. That's what happens when you have 3 healers on the team now. You got a 6th player on the field from the side of the Houston Outlaws. The Bob from Merritt had to sacrifice his life for it. And I think Flora was able to catch the shot while, you know, Merritt was pointing the Bob finger out into the distance. And New York, despite having such a good start at this fight, the 5-on-4 and more and the ultimates, they've only gotten 2 ticks. They've lost some real estate, and Pelican is going to send them packing once and for all. You got the sound barrier, you got the blade. Now we're looking for kills. New York needs to disengage, and I can't believe this is happening.
All right, Lastro finally down. Now there's less healing for Pelican. Surely he's going to get chased down here. Finds the mini pack, caught in the corner. It's curtains to them. I don't know about that, Doge, to be honest. However, still could work out. Who knows? NYXL? Surely they finished it. Surely they finished it. No, no. That's illegal.
The Skater Boy backhand, I love to see it because Flora was getting, I think Flora was getting Merit really, really low, so Lep had to step in and take matters in his own hands. So it took a little while for New York to get that done and took some ults to do it. Now, what do they have left for Bridge? Maybe a rally, maybe a blade.
Yeah, the blade here is going to be super important. Lemon, as you can see, Lastro still a couple of ticks away from the rally, and that means once again we're going to see NYXL try and get aggressive to force a commanding shout out of Doge. After that's used, Kellen can use his own to give the additional health and speed over to Yaki, and there's no instant health for Yaki to have to carve through.
Okay, had kind of Yaki present himself on the bridge, but Ansun J couldn't skate out fast enough that how Yaki dropped off the side of the bridge, and Ansun J chose the corner and just got shot at. The rest of the Houston Outlaws dominate the high ground, and he burns Yaki to death. That's what you love to see.
Yaki pushed his luck right there. He pushed his luck, and honestly, this has kind of closed the chance that Yaki had to get a easily coordinated blade. Now he's got to deal with the rally from Lastro. Ideally, you want to have the blade as the rally is popped from a Brigitte, so she can't accumulate that overhealth, and she's still an easy kill.
Okay, that's already assassination onto Kellen, and the Outlaws are going to go for more. They have the rally, and Yaki's blade is just not able to finish off any targets, and he's caught in no man's land, completely surrounded. There's just so much healing to really slice through, and Yaki not having Kellen by his side, he was missing one of those utilities that he desperately needed. So New York are left down to 2 minutes to get back towards Bridge. I know it looks like they're trying to cap the point, but Outlaws are kind of spawn camping that. Blep is looming above them, and he actually gets out.
Wake up, honey. It's time to try and exit your spawn with a Junker Queen there. The bulb is good to go, and of course that's likely going to be placed in a position to cover an escape of Merit, who is taking some rather audacious peeks. Oh, there he goes.
Bob somewhere in the distance. He's got a load to do too in the laundromat, I guess. At 5-on-3, sound barrier 2, and the blade. Maybe even a lot of investment. You know, that's 3 ults just to keep New York in spawn, so they're fine just draining this out and see how this goes.
I would like all children under the age of 16 to now look away from a broadcast. This is no longer appropriate for you to watch. Houston Outlaws are in full-on cyberbully mode right now, and we frown upon bullying here at Overwatch League. But you know what? I think the Houston fans are still going to be pretty chuffed. Oh my
That's
god.
a rampage, 4-man rampage from Doge, including hitting the supports. You just go back to spawn. That is the only safe space left on this map. I was not expecting New York to get dominated. By the way, the cart's all the way over here in case anyone forgot.
Pelicans in the back again. You can see a silhouette wrapping round. Flora's going to be here. We'll have a very safe space to try and work the overclock from Lemon, and Doge is isolated.
You just love spot camping a little too much. I don't think anyone had rookies doing that on their debut game, but New York finally break 3, but they got 17 seconds left, and through all the hopium you could think of, New York still have to even try to finish the map with the timing that the Outlaws have. This is an Outlaws map indeed.
It might currently be physically impossible for NYXL to do anything better than a draw here. But first, we've got to think about second point, because you have lacking bridge control now. Houston Outlaws are still going to be able to try and control this engagement, and they can do it at their own leisure.
Oh, Outlaws just jump into the New York Excelsior backline because New York just opted to go under the car wash and play as a unit. Houston got access to the backline, but they really didn't get anything done now, did they? Yaki with the blade does just that. 2 kills and just has the Dasher left, who gets booped out of the shelter that the rest of his team went through. So New York, they managed a fight win here. They got 1 more to go, though, to cap point B, I think.
That's a really good blade there from Yaki, and Houston Outlaws, they still aren't even fully spawned. Alas, they do have multiple speed boosts to try and work with. Lep's been waiting. Does Pelican want to sacrifice himself? The answer's no. I've got a KD to save, man. We've just been spawn camping these guys. We'll win later. Unsoon J, sound barrier, ready to go, but there isn't going to be a huge onus for it to come out early unless Pelican makes a truly audacious blade. Ideally, just saving this for a moment when NYXL really need that additional space to move forward and maybe catch Houston Outlaws in a disengage.
Oh, Houston are playing into close cover. New York just taking the right side angle to see if they can get any charged up Flora shots, maybe into a support, mainly Lastro, who's been taking hits here or there, but hasn't gotten too low. Dojo half health, uses the shout. You got the Bob from Marathon as maybe a distraction. Kind of creates some distance between the Outlaws and the Excelsior for now. But how long are the Outlaws gonna want to stay here? They have the blade and the sound barrier. New York have a rampage if Outlaws stay clumped up enough. New York around the corner. That's a good axe right into the supports. My force left to use the sound barrier, but without Pelican, does Outlaws even think this is... there is a point to this? And that's a great knife from Kellen to bring Merritt back into the fire. So New York win a fight off of not really needing to use ults.
That was an amazing fight from Kellen as well. Also, keeping a finger away from that Q key. Maintaining the rampage here is super important because it means you can try and weave it into the ult plan of your other DPS. Either you use the rampage first, force out the barrier, and then you blade, or you have Yaki just play some poke, use the blade, and then the rampage afterwards.
New York, last fight for the map. It's overtime too. It's the Pelican blade, but it's countered by the Onsu J sound barrier. Pelican can kind of hide out, hope for packs, but he got even more than he asked for. The sound barrier and the rally layered from the Houston Outlaws. They get hit by a 3-man rampage though from Kellen, but Outlaws are still doing okay. They finished off the other tank. Kellen is missing. The rally will keep the remnants of Excelsior kicking, but they can't leave this Corrin without a tank. They're taking so much damage, and they just let the zone off New York, and they can't stay on it. Outlaws will go to series point.
Oh, that didn't feel good. That does not feel good at all. Arguably the first one, maybe not, but I think the NYXL still had a good amount of people in that fight, and one of the things that really concerned me in that final fight there was that Gangnam Jin was feeling a little bit duelist happy, in my opinion, on the Brigitte. Was trying to chase down Pelican, who still had a dash and plenty of health to work with, and Pelican actually managed to kite the rally away from a mainstay of NYXL, or New York Excelsior, and that meant that they weren't getting that additional rally armor, they weren't getting as much value out of the Inspire, and they didn't have the peeling power of the whip shot either, and that meant that the rest of New York Excelsior were incredibly vulnerable, Lemon.
Yeah, the New York Excelsior, their cycling of resources has been inconsistent, but what is consistent is Doge just being the better Junker Queen player against Kellen, and we haven't seen Dante subbed in yet, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It is series point for the Houston Outlaws. We got 1 more map to go, so we'll see you after this.
Praise the sun! It's Heatwave o'clock and it's time to celebrate summer. So share your art celebrating the Overwatch League and summer vibes on the fan art gallery for a chance to be featured on the broadcast. Thank you, X2 Santa. That's a lovely little doodle you've got there.
Oh, that is it's a new doodle too. Look at the little toesies, the flowers, so cute.
The toe shading, unbelievable.
Just missing the tan. I wish I was out tanning right now, but I'm here looking at a map 3 between the Outlaws and the Excelsior, where we had New York Excelsior just have some issues on the objective. You know, as soon as they lose Kellen, it's been tough for New York macro-wise to kind of stick together. We've had some signs of life from Flora and Yaki. Yaki just having issues with the blades. Here's the final moments of the final C9, or if you want to call it that. Once Kellen was dead, really New York got chased off the car in overtime. Really just couldn't live long enough, or really stall long enough for Kellen to get back.
And look in particular where Gangnam Jin is here as well, actually coming back from a long way away. While admittedly Gangnam Jin did do a little bit of a disengage to try and get away from the dog pile that Houston Outlaws tried to make happen when he initially popped for the rally. I think that Gangnam Jin overcommitted to staying away for a while longer to duel Pelican, and that's one of the things that I think has actually been a pretty big difference between these teams. That's how they interact with the Brigitte. Gangnam Jin is seemingly being focused quite a bit more when either he pops the rally or at the beginning of fights, whereas Lastro I think is surviving a little while longer and isn't eating as much focus from the New York Excelsior, and that means that Lastro can stay alive and disperse those health packs over to people who seem to be taking individual duels, because if there's one place where New York Excelsior have been lacking Lemon, it's in the target focus. Everyone just goes for their own duel.
And yeah, I gotta say, that's a great point of just the focus fire is just even more important with now having 3 healers in these compositions. And I gotta say, we're really, both you and I are been really impressed with how Doge and Lep have been handling things. Haven't seen any major beef or any spaghetti spilled on the floor. And I'm not saying New York are dead in the water. I think that last map just exaggerated that, because there were some moments of brilliance, whether it was Flora getting a first couple of picks on the point towards the bridge. Yaki has had some issues because every time he blades and he finds his perfect opportunity, here comes the shout, the barrier, the rally, like everything is thrown whenever Yaki even speaks a word. So it's been rough, because whenever you pred for New York Excelsior, you're predding on the fact that is Yaki going to go absolutely feral and carry New York to a victory, because at least that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay, I like the setup here from New York Excelsior to try and get a crunch on the cart, with Kellen staying on the low ground, Gangnam Jin and Ansoon Jae staying up above. Gangnam Jin staying up above as well is going to be critical, because he's going to get pressured to start moving towards the low ground to get involved with the fight itself using the mace. But the longer Gangnam Jin can stay up and stay in safety to hand out those armor packs freely, the better it's going to be for New York Excelsior. So watch for when Gangnam Jin commits to the dive.
The fact that New York are just on this high ground, how long are they going to stay there? Kellen is W King when he is 25% HP. He still lives through all the packs, all the shouting he can do, kicking and screaming. Pelican was all up in their business trying to get dash resets, but the resource from New York came just in time where Pelican couldn't get the finish and got caught out in the open. At least you trade that. Kellen eventually dies once he was 25% HP and lower through all the resources. So you're left with a 4-on-4, but no tank for the defense, so it kind of just leaves everyone else unprotected, as you can imagine, leaving Merritt's job to be quite easy against Flora.
We saw Pelican there actually take a huge amount of attention as well with the deflect, and one thing I want to note is that while you can avoid initial damage from things like the knife and carnage from Junker Queen with the deflect, you still get afflicted with the wound, so you'll still take that bleeding damage.
Oh, Kellen's like, you're trapped in here with me, buddy. He's got the axe, he's got everyone bleeding, but what he needs is some healers. He don't have Ansoon Jae, but he's besties with Gangnam Jin, and that ain't gonna live too much longer either. New York silver lining is they got the rally out of Lastro, which got used in the last 3 seconds of that fight, so not great.
Dude, Doge is actually doing so much right now. Equaling Pelican's ult charge, even though Pelican admittedly has been rounded upon a couple of times and his uptime has been somewhat trending downwards because of how much time he has to spend running away and using Reflect. But Doge is doing huge amounts of damage. Ansoon Jae's already so low, that's going to force out repair packs from Gangnam Jin, and that's healing that Ansoon Jae can't get himself and will deny more ult charge.
Now, big high ground advantage, except Kellen just goes out to the woods alone. And now it forced Gunhamjin to have to rally after him, like, get back here. It's like the mom with the sunscreen, the kid at the beach, and Kellen somehow is still living through stepping on whatever he is right now. And yeah, Outlaws all they have to do is chase Kellen when he's separated away from Mama Duckling.
I'm okay, Mum. We rallied before we went out. No, you've got to do it every 4 hours. Houston Outlaws now, they have so many tools to try and bring this one towards the end. Unsum J in particular, because he's going to have to try and get aggressive to build up this barrier, potentially. Pelican might even be able to catch him in mid-cast and force an Ajax speed. That's an
that's a, you guys better cap the point, because I just rampaged 1v5, but he does make it out. The sound bear from left gave him some extra cushion, and New York are very much allergic to stalling the cart, so they're taking all these 1v1s that are not benefiting them at all, and that's a 5-minute time bank for the Outlaws for C.
Before Doge there actually used his rampage, I was going to chastise him a little bit for what seemed to be a super early commanding shout, but the rationale behind it makes a lot more sense if he's going to ult into 4 people there, because not only does he get a little bit more health and the movement speed to try and escape as well, but it gives move speed to the rest of the team so that they can try and follow up on that ultimate without having to expend the Lucio amp, so he can amp in the middle of a fight instead for additional healing in the midst of the brawl.
I'm okay with Doge inting for the objective. At least Outlaws do touch it, so it is what it is. So Pelican has to. Sorry, everyone's catching strays today. So you got the shout from Doge starting things off, but New York are on the high ground, except Unsum J and Kellen are at the back of C. But Flora throws a bot down and cuts off the rotations of the Outlaws, and Pelican tries to make the most of this moment with a Dragon Blade. He slices through so many pixels right now and still ends up with kills. Finishes off Gunhamjin. Or Outlaws gonna really have this time bank. New York will have to touch soon, or this is gonna be unbeatable.
Flores moved over to the Tracer, could actually get caught out here by a boop on the way in. Yes, it is! Lastro, Lep, they look over him, they say, not in our 100-acre wood, mate. Houston Outlaws, watch this time bank go down. 1, 2.
Dude, Doge is trying to keep Lep in check because all Lep cares about right now is posting C9 every time they cap an objective. And Doge even caught him. He said, don't say it. Don't make the rookie mistake. But I'd be talking like that too if I had a 4-minute time bank on Dorado to like some 3-4 minute time bank on Midtown. Like, it looks so close in map 1. Round 3, 99-99. And I just don't know what happened in New York. Maybe it's just the New York syndrome that happens.
Well, I think that New York, what happened is they had to move into maps where you had to plan for more than just the next fight. Like, Control can be a very moment-to-moment kind of game because it has the 3 submaps, and all of which are like very short little flashpoint instances of Overwatch. And New York Excelsior are doing a pretty good job of setting up these first fights the same way that you do on Control to try and just get the initial point cap, and then from there you can just work from defensive positioning. But now things get even harder for New York Excelsior because they can't access the high ground easily. Admittedly, Doge is going to take an early fight here by playing around Red House, and that's going to mean that NYXL aren't going to have to deal with this too much. But on second point in particular, if they get there, New York Excelsior are going to have to put a lot of mental effort into planning their pathing so they don't catch too much poke from Merit before an engage happens.
Now New York leave the spawn room doors with some unfriendly neighbors on these rooftops. So New York, I mean, it's kind of hard, and you're not really expecting the Junker Queen to be able to knife somebody down from there, but that would be pretty sick. And Kellen would get a lot of rep points back if he did. But Pelican did not think that Yaki was going to be up there and almost got caught out. Yaki had to get packed up before he engaged into Pelican again. The shout from Doge has been used, but they lost Lep on their journey towards New York. And you're kind of left with the 4-on-4 because Lep and Gunhamjin are down. So New York is just going to chill out. They need their main support back.
Watch how when Pelican makes these engagements as well, usually it's like in a duo with Lastro, so it is continuously getting that healing and getting a little bit more in the way of direct support and damage as well, whereas for Yaki, he's often playing alone.
Ooh, Doge is so low, and New York couldn't capitalize on that. So free cart push from New York once they got him just back, and even surprised that Outlaw stuck around without Lep, but he gets back so quickly, so it's either like, and especially a 4-on-4, New York could have taken the 5-on-4 and just really ran them over, but that's kind of the issue in New York is they don't have kind of that decisive bulldoze that I feel like Outlaws are just so much better at. But they get hit by a dynamite. Now we're working up towards Bob.
It might be that Myeonbong was a large part of the overall New York Excelsior execution style. Kellen here. It's good shots, and Vakan's just going to connect as well. This needs to be a crunch onto Doge.
Oh, Kellen can be punished here too. He's been booped away from the pack, and he doesn't have a shout to rotate back around the corner. He uses the axe to just shut the door on whoever Outlaws comes around, and Lastro gets caught out without a shield, so Outlaws couldn't get the punish off the Kellen quick enough. Shout comes up for Kellen, used it immediately to get back to the objective. Outlaws are now behind the attackers and trying to rotate back towards the front. Merritt is so glad he didn't just get shotgunned by Kellen there. Throws the Bob to stall out the cart, buys time for Outlaws to try to rotate back to their defensive spots, but it's really just too late at this point. New York have already got the kills.
Oh yes, another bowl of all L's, because both NYXL support ults were just used to deal the Bob. That is not great at all. Now it's home free for Pelican if he can get topped up before moving in.
Well,
Yaki happens.
Yaki happens, and we need Yaki to happen more often for New York. Am I right? Like, 2 kills. I want
so much you can ask, Lemon.
so much Yaki on this team. Just, we need a 5K. New York needs the 5K, and well, at least they got point A.
My man Yaki on that Sisyphus mythology right now. Just push that boulder up the hill, bud. Just push that boulder. Kellen, he has outpaced Doge when it comes to the Rampage. But the thing is, Houston Outlaws here, they can control the efficacy of the Rampage by deciding how many of them actually drop down here, because obviously there's not a huge vertical hitbox to the Rampage. Doge is going to use the shout to bring everyone in.
Oh, the shout from Doge plus the Dragon Blade from Pelican, the natural combo that makes sense. New York immediately lost Gangnam Jin and Flora, and you were just hoping to get back to the spawn room doors, but Ansu-J took a room and was like, Kellen, that's a you. Kellen Yaki, that's a you problem. I'm the rookie. I need to be safe here. I need to preserve my KDA.
That was a really cool physical dodge on the carnage as well from Pelican to make sure he didn't suffer the wound. And look where we are again. Not quite like Midtown. It's a big breakout this time from a New York Excelsior.
Oh, God. It was Doge that costed last time, no, but he's got the Rampage. And you can kind of, you'll get stopped by the spawn room doors, so you don't have to 1v5 int like we saw in point B. Even though it wasn't an int, they got the point anyway, so it's really not an insult. But there are multiple doors that New York can come out of. Kind of like, oh, the Wheel of Fortune, but man, it looks like New York make their way out. The Rampage from Doge hits Flora and maybe Gangnam Jin. Gangnam just evaporates into the air, and Flora can't get away fast enough, so we got a spawn camp in our first matches of the Summer Showdown.
Yeah, in terms of map geometry though, this should be an easier spawn to break out of because there's no high ground directly above it compared to Midtown where Pelican could just hang out above the spawn forever. It's going to be the Bob to try and break out here.
Okay, Bob v Bob. One has the hops, and it is the Outlaws Bob that stands tall, but the rest of New York finally made their way out. Needing to use the Bob is not ideal, but you traded out with the other Bob, so it's chillin'. Merritt is also picking people off. He's gotten 2 just from standing on the card. Finally, Yaki chunks him down, but a lot of time has been taken away from New York now.
That boulder's moving, Lemon. That boulder is moving. Yaki do be pushing. And of course, New York Excelsior, they didn't care too much about losing players there. They were right next to their spawn. Alas, this time bank is still becoming perilously low, especially when compared to Houston Outlaws' 3-minute and 58-second time bank. And there still is no control of the high ground. So once again, Houston Outlaws control the engage.
Oh, as soon as they got the dynamite, Houston dropped. They used the shout and the barrier in response to the Yaki Dragon Blade. He still managed to only focus down left and makes that call without the speed. Outlaws can't get away fast enough, and they're just falling like dominoes. A great call by Yaki to identify the critical utility, which is the speed. Take that out, and the rest of the Outlaws are stuck.
Yaki can't die here. Yaki can't die here. Lep punches him out. Oh, that is going to mean that New York Excelsior are going to be a little bit of a disadvantage for this next fight. And how does Kellen deal with that is the question. Do you go for an earlier Rampage? Ideally, you want to hold on to it until your Genji is there and can start chaining from kill to kill on anti-targets. This will give an opening, though, for Pelican to be pocketed a little bit more with those repair packs.
Oh, a Rampage from Kellen hits only Merritt, and that thing has a pretty wide radius. So I'm very surprised he couldn't get more out of that. So So Outlaws are fine. Maybe they lose Merit. Pelican's pretty low after that blade and didn't convert much out of it. 14 seconds for New York, and Doge and the supports are so anchored on this card that there's just no progression for this attack. Yaki does dip Pelican, so Yaki will do Yaki things and bring maybe a victory for New York. At least the capture on point B is what they need to start that up. It is overtime though, but they'll get a minute and a half extra to finish point C.
Interesting note about that positioning there from New York Excelsior as well. They were kind of daring Doge to use the Rampage because there was a good chance he would have sent himself flying off the map at the end of the arc. So New York Excelsior made it an unpalatable option for Doge to try and clutch that, and that was a great use of the map geometry in order to try and mollify one of the potential clutch conditions of Houston Outlaws.
Oh, surprise! A huge Rampage from Doge. Actually only hits Ansuji and Kellen. I thought more people from New York were clumped up there, but Flora throws down the bomb, and that's been picking away Outlaws on their kind of close hold of point C. Now New York have one fight to win to complete the map.
And overall, that is quite a cheap engagement there from New York Excelsior to only use the Bob. Merit's going to be able to have his own here, and that's going to be a very critical target to try and just make sure the cart is stalled while your more rush-heavy comp wants to get away from the cart and find New York Excelsior when they're most exposed. The rally's popped, and that's going to give additional health, and Ansunjae's ready for a barrier.
I like the Bob thrown from Merit, already forces out some cooldowns, but as Outlaws approach, the cooldowns that New York were just using are used to kill them all. Yaki with a huge clutch on the blade, and the follow-up from the entirety of the team gives the Excelsior the cap on the map. But there's one thing that's sticking out like a sore thumb, and is the massive gap in time banks, 4:44 to 1 minute.
Yaki happens, Lemon. And I want to take a moment while we've got some more time in this break to think about why Houston Outlaws are losing so many of these engagements. And I think it's actually because they're engaging off the high ground while using their commanding shout. And I think that they are putting too much of their advantage into the opener of that fight, because it means that when they drop off the high ground and use commanding shout, New York Excelsior can counter both of those advantages, which by themselves can be fight opening and fight winning with either one speed boost away or one commanding shout in return. And that means that Houston Outlaws essentially don't have the high ground advantage that they initially thought they did, because it's essentially just being wrapped in with the commanding shout engage. Honestly, I would have preferred for Houston Outlaws to engage off the high ground without the commanding shout so that they can control when the engage happens, and maybe get a little bit more poke onto people like Kellen to try and force out the own response shout first.
And speaking of just the type of bait or the type of poke that the Houston Outlaws had in that last fight, they used the Bob from Merit and thought they got just way more value out of that. Like maybe they heard the shout from Kellen or whatever else, cooldowns used on around the corner. But that was the big deal, is that New York were around the corner and Houston didn't really have the intel that they thought they had. So they walked into a losing fight, but it's still, the work has already been done for Houston. It would take just the biggest throw of all time for this to go New York's way, but let's see what they can do with the time that they have. It's only 60 seconds. And all you can do for Outlaws, if you want, is to just sustain and live on the cart and drain this time bank. All of New York are just burning alive from this dynamite from Merit, which is just this natural curvature of the road, has a high ground to throw it above, and in the middle of New York, here's a dash from Yaki. He thinks that Doge is low. The shout is used in the last second. Doge is in trouble, and Lastro and Bleb could not scoop him out of the grave, so New York will get a fight win for now.
Yeah, Houston Outlaws might have been using the natural curve of the road, Lemon, but New York Excelsior, they're flat roaders. They don't believe in that at all. And now, with a little bit of momentum on their side, they can try and get some early poke on a Houston Outlaws, so have to come in and touch the cart. This is going to be where Flora can feast and try and really build up an HP and damage advantage to New York Excelsior before the Junker Queens clash. An amazing dynamite that's already forced out so much from the Brig and the Lucio.
Oh, Houston are so low, and Doge is trying to stay safe behind the statue, but New York finally had the good chase down, and Kellen is starting to pop off in the last few seconds, so it's working out for New York. They'll be capping A with the minute that they have, and that was really kind of the bare minimum we needed them to do with the minute that they have, especially against the kind of 5-minute bank on the other side. So how far can New York go? That is the million-dollar question.
And from New York, that wasn't just target focus, that was target swapping as well. They got Pelican super low with both a dynamite and a couple of shots from Flora. And then when the supports went to address that, it left Doge exposed and New York Excelsior could speed boost on top of them. A big advantage here for Ansoonjae when it comes to the sound barrier, but once again, I want to see Outlaws not use their commanding shout on the high ground engage.
Pelican wants to use this blade, but it is Yaki that pulls the trigger first. The shout is used from Doge to allow the Outlaws to disengage. Staying through main, maybe having some people in gardens. Now they throw the Merit Bob in the back line. Yaki and Flora use their counter ults, and it's just bodies hitting the floor, but Pelican is slaying everyone from the Excelsior. And Flora is the last alive, and that will be the end of the attacking road for New York. Not even getting halfway to point B, but still good.
Not the Ansoonjax B. Oh, that sucks. That sucks.
Well, all of his beats were good except that one, you know.
Except that one, yes.
No A+
New York
today.
Excelsior, it might be a little late, Lemon, but we have seen the character arc. We've seen the growth. And also, Houston Outlaws did exactly what I wanted. They engaged from high ground without using their main engagement cooldown. And that meant that when Yaki pulled out the blade, Doge could still go, oh yes, I have commanding shout because I didn't use it for no reason. And now we can disengage, and Doge saves the team from Yaki doing Yaki things, which honestly has been the backbone of the New York Excelsior plan.
Oh, the producers did Ansoonjae so dirty there. I thought he was safe around the corner.
Welcome to Owl again.
Everyone has to get one beat canceled. It just sucks it's on your first match. That was to the producer. I hate you. Also to Lep, who probably dropped the Ajax word. But still, if that beat would have went off, that would have been massive for Excelsior. So you just got to shout out Pelican for clutching up in that moment.
I mean, Pelican knew exactly where he was going, right? Like, it was a good identification of a target. Houston Outlaws moved down onto the low ground, so they knew exactly where Ansoonjae was. They tracked the ultimate was available, and then they dealt with it in good time by doing some initial damage as well to make sure that he was in one slice territory. Now, Houston Outlaws, they simply have to match the distance, and they've got plenty of time to do it.
He just is accepting that fate, playing on the off angle in front of a brig like that. She do be doing more damage. I mean, last show has killed 3 people, by the way, as Brigida. So although she doesn't have the stun anymore, they did give her more damage, and she do be hurting.
Yeah, the Lastro triple. We also wanted at the beginning of this series, Lemon, where they'd put Lep on his best hero, which is for Lucio, even though Lastro had been playing more Lucio at the beginning of the season. I've actually said, no, Lastro, go play the Brig. We're going to trust in the Lucio of our newbie, and it's paying dividends for Outlaws here. Look at how close Doge is holding right now. Has to be careful not to take too much poke.
Oh, Doge is in so much trouble. Great shots coming in from New York to finish that off, and Pelican Merit really low. They got a lead. Take the next bus out of town. Don't get staggered here. Yaki's on the chase. He wants to hunt him down, but doesn't fully commit.
This is actually a thing that I wanted to talk about on Midtown, but I didn't really get the time, and that's that Kellen was doing this a lot on Nepal. If you hold those corners without your team as a Junker Queen, it means that you have to use your shout to disengage, which is never going to be in your favor when the other team have 2 speed boosts. And honestly, I think it's going to get phased out over the next couple of weeks.
Good whip shots from Lashor, create that distance between himself and Kellen. He misses that one as soon as I pointed out, but that's just gonna be the Brigida's job from here on out. On top of this rally, Ganamjin is low. He's gonna make that call. Outlaws full send it towards the end, but really the kills on Ganamjin has been low forever now, and Outlaws, their focus fires all over the place. Doge is so centered on Kellen, while hoping the rest of the DPS finish off everyone else on the rest of the team. And New York, all they had to do was sustain and wait for cooldowns, and they fire back even harder. And that lack of focus fire is gonna hurt Outlaws.
All right, I chastised Ansoonjae for the beat, but one thing that was really good in that fight was that Ansoonjae was playing up high, so that it would be harder to catch with a rampage if it was going to happen from Doge, but also manages to get stealthy boops on Doge to make sure mid-cast on the Carnage that it won't hit either Gangnam or Kellen, both of whom are very vulnerable to getting hit by that rampage and taking major damage. Now New York Excelsior, they have 5 ultimates to play with, and they can bring these out one by one. I'd like to see the Bob come out first just to try and force a response from Houston Outlaws, but ideally you want them to move further in first so that they can't just easily disengage.
5 ults and a dream for New York to just full hold Outlaws on a map that I thought it would take a major throw for Outlaws not to win. But that's a 3-man rampage from Kellen, hitting including Lep and Lastro throughout this. Lep manages to live, but really Lucio is not enough healing for the Outlaws. And this has been multiple fights that New York have won at the end of A, leaving Outlaws from a 4:44 time bank to only minute 40.
That was still expensive though for New York Excelsior. 4 ultimates expended in response to 2. Unsoon J critically is holding onto his soundbar. We've talked before about the Sophie's choice for Lucio's. Do you use it to deal with the blade, or do you use it to deal with the rampage?
So many fires to put out. We'll see which one they pick. Onsoon J with the barrier to engage into and immediately eliminate Mara, Doge, and Lastro. Pelican now blades at the last second, hesitated on this moment, but thought he needed to clutch up here and now. He still staggered out 2 members of Excelsior, which will take some time to get back, but Outlaws, we'll see if they can find a moment to engage off of this. I don't know.
No, I don't like that blade. It does kill people, admittedly, but Unsoon J used to beat Engage, and there would have been nothing to do with a combination of a rally and a blade, but now it's only the rally here from Doge, and that can be answered by Kellen with a commanding shout and a disengage. But
Doge with the shortest rampage just to catch Unsoon J and Kellen, which did enough of its job and forced New York Excelsior to disperse away from the card. And as they just split off, Outlaws finally focused down, and Lastro's killing a lot of people in this lobby, surprisingly. But nonetheless, it took the majority of Outlaws' time bank just to get A, and the job's not even done. The box of victory is around the corner.
Really cool rampage air as well from Doge, essentially doing what Huddy used to do with a turnaround Ryan charge, just going straight into the fountain, using the wide AoE that the rampage has to catch 3 people, but essentially not go anywhere, so you're already on top of them for damage. Lastro can pre-pop the rally here to build up some of this armor before the fight happens in earnest, but Flora almost has the bob and look towards Yaki to once again push that Sisyphean boulder to a map win.
That's all Houston need to do is just push this card. It's New York that are forced to make a move. And Flora says checkmate and has already picked off Merit 5-on-4. Pelican is separated away from the flock, and New York are chasing it down. But Pelican is so wiggly, he escapes into the alleyway. And Houston are just trying to live long enough to get their final member back. Lastro is there. Left drops the barrier. Outlaws are going to fight with tooth and nail to get the victory that was assured of them. Merit is close to Bob. New York is fighting through the flames. Quite literally, they're burning to the dynamite, but they use the rally to sustain. It's back and forth, and the rampage from Kellen strikes down 3. Lastro is barely alive, only thanks to the shout of Doge. And the Outlaws, with a 4:44 time bank to 1 minute, a legendary throw to give New York Excelsior a map win.
Well, Jonathan Reinforce Larson, you wanted pro versus throw. You're going to be able to talk about that one in our analyst desk later, but I'm afraid we're going to have to keep it away from you guys for a while longer. 2-1 here. New York Excelsior, they have unlocked their inner ability to plan a fight and not just rely on Yaki. Admittedly here, Houston, maybe they overpeaked in that early fight, especially Merit being without any physical cover against Flora gets easily 2-tapped. But New York Excelsior, overall, I think that the real glow up in this map, Lemon, has been Kellen.
That too, even Flora getting these first picks more often than not over Merit. This has been New York waking up in the red zone. But it's still 2-1 for the Outlaws, and they know how to start things off. They just got to know how to finish them. We'll see you guys after this break. Everyone, welcome back to the Overwatch League. Today's word of the day is, say it with me, Houstonable. Because apparently it's always Houstonable no matter how many extra minutes you have over the opponent.
Weirdly, we've already had a patented Houstonable moment in this season. I think it was on a Colosseo against Boston Uprising, where Houston Outlaws lost, I think, a 100-meter lead. It was, frankly, unconscionable. I don't think that the fans will ever forgive them. And now there are 2 original sins for the Houston Outlaws, which will never be forgiven. We've opened the Pandora's box of throw, some might say. As we go in towards map number 4, it is, of course, going to be Push. And I believe we're going to be going to New Queen Street, which is one of the longer maps, so I'd expect to see maybe a little bit more of the Ashe and the Sojourns really taking control of these engagements, because it's a little bit harder to path without taking too much damage, so I'm looking for huge dynamites and big disruptor fields.
And just talking about the Sojourn and Ashe choice, which is most likely going to be the thing that varies the most, unless people want to be like overly creative and have Overwatch's laboratory happen in those first few matches. The Ashe and the Sojourn is the main thing that's going to change, and we already talked about the burst damage and consistency of Ashe, but also the dynamite that dwindles them down for the Genji dashes, to actually how important the Bob is to create that distance between yourself and the other team, or when the team pushes into you, then you throw the Bob in the middle of the fight, and kind of these squishy targets, mainly the Lucio, who doesn't have the armor, kind of is the first to fall to that Bob. So it's been cool to see. I wonder if now we're going to get some Sojourn because of kind of the longer range, but I think Flora and Merit have just been rocking on Ashe.
Yeah, so while we've got some Ashes, we can also talk about other ways that the Bob is really good, in that there's no major mitigation condition as well. There's no Ana that's here to sleep the Bob, which is the usual way to try and shut down that ultimate. And also, it's a low output damage backline here, including a support that can't headshot in Brigitte, which means that burning that Bob is a lot less palatable than it was in our previous meta, where you had the ability for Zen to try and just burn them down with headshots in Discord.
Well, Mirror Comps head to the main hockey statue. Kind of you're gonna fight this pretty much the same way as you would in any other composition. This is the point of high ground that you want your Ashes to dominate, and Lasher got way too close and got also pulled by Kellen. And that is not the start that the Outlaws were looking for. And you gotta hope that you can shake off that last map, no matter how confident you were on how you were gonna win it.
Yeah, and the second that you lose one of your speed boosts, things become very difficult in this rush versus rush, because suddenly you don't have control of your own destiny. You're essentially hoping that the other team is merciful and decides to play the objective instead, which in this case, New York Excelsior did, as they didn't want to risk getting booped off of the side of Toronto.
Now you got the dynamite running on Yaki. Surely he's dead. Dashes out at the last second before Merrick can get the final shot in. Now Excelsior are healed back up. Just trying to get any kind of distance, but maybe punishing Pelican in this window could be next on the menu. Flora finds a dynamite in that little gym room, but it's kind of the timing of these not ultimates, but the cooldowns rather, of when you want to shout. Do you want to engage with it or disengage with it? Maybe you get these random picks from the Ashes. It's a little bit more difficult than, you know, you would with a 100 charge Sojourn, but that's the one you're looking for. A headshot onto a Genji. That's Pelican falling for the Outlaws, and they head on away.
The headshot is perfect here, and both of these, nice little bugs there from Ansun J. Wall riding on the bot. Both of these Junker Queens, Lemon, they're trying their best to not use a commanding shout to peel for low house members. They have to try and trust in their supports to deal with that.
Oh, the Bob from Merritt to cross right in front of New York's path, who tried to take shelter, it looks like, in the gym, and now they're deflecting into the Bob, thinking they can burn it, but New York get around the corner, and Yaki choosing to get out into the open. Almost dropped to 1 HP, but didn't get killed yet. Here's the shout from Doge, matched by Kellen. Got him Jin with the rally. New York, though, need to help Yaki. So low, but keeps dashing away from danger, and Outlaw can't seem to pin him down, and Yaki's now farming the backline. Merritt gets the last lap at the end, but without Yaki, New York might miss him terribly when it comes to the push further into the spawn.
I've been critical of Ansun J over the course of the series, but I think that was actually a really smart beat engage there as well. It wasn't responding to anything massive on him, but it did allow them to get the cap on the point and the butt scratch, which is huge from YXL.
Flourish is dead. Houston trying to farm as much as they can. Speed, go, go. I almost said go gadget, but just go, honestly.
Go gadget axe.
Please, Legal. Just fire leg day, not me.
Take him. He's expendable.
Yeah, I mean, good stagger cell from Outlaws.
All right, let's have a look at these ultimates, shall we? Yaki and Pelican both rolling in with the blades. But the thing is, New York Excelsior used both of their support ultimates in order to try and cap that previous hit here. So I think the Houston Outlaws have to move fast and use their blade before New York Excelsior are into it. If we win this fight, we automatically get the cap kind of position.
Okay, the blade from Pelican. Not wanting to use any more ultimates to sustain him. They're actually just backing away from the bomb placed from floor around the corner. Some space created thanks to New York. They got 2 rampages, but this is a pretty long lane. But Doge uses the perfect kind of short distance to get 4 members anti-healed, except Yaki. Yaki tries to blade, thinking, well, I wasn't anti-healed. Let me make the most out of this while Outlaws is pushing. But he just got dominated because New York were running away from that fight. But without Yaki, New York just still re-engaged, and Lastro just rallied kind of 3v5, thinking that was winnable, but that's an X to down from me.
No, Lemon. There was no thinking involved in that rally. Just queuing.
Sure.
The brain went into sleep mode for a moment. It's encountered a problem and needs to close. Would you like to send an error report? Once again, New York Excelsior have both of their support ultimates coming up at once. It seems like these teams have sort of relaxed into a tempo of just burning both their support ultimates to try and guarantee one fight win. And of course, the Bob's been able to move so far here that if New York Excelsior can win this fight, they will get more push.
It's only a 12-meter lead for New York, and now extending that further as Kellen found an isolated member to the right. Now they coalesce back down the main road. Houston wanting to maybe take this high ground. You see New York has already pinged the presence of Pelican up there, but it's just so dangerous. Pelican doesn't usually drop into that back line. He doesn't want to be the reason that Outlaws could get full push into their spawn, so it's about holding this right corner, and Merritt has the bomb if they want to create space at any moment. It's kind of both teams feeling each other out. It's just getting intel, but New York now engage off the speed of the sound barrier, and the Merritt bomb was thrown out. Merritt almost got, I'm not sure if that's even cancelable, but Merritt's dead either way, and so are the rest of Outlaws, and New York are heading towards a full capture, and this could be game 5-able.
This might well be game 5-able, and one of the things that New York Excelsior are doing at the moment is essentially what Dallas Fuel have always done on Rush, which is just shut up and get rushed, idiot. They just press W with the sound barrier to just try and guarantee fight wins on a team that's still preparing to build up towards their ultimates. Yes, now a huge amount has been used by New York Excelsior, but look at the distance that they've generated here, and Houston Outlaws are yet to even get the butt scratch on the Timothy. Pardon me, I forgot his name.
Timmy, I know it's been so long, and we were, we were gone for so long, but I like that New York just lead. The full cap would have been the best ego check you could have done to the team that, kept spamming C9s, but New York just then re-engaged as soon as Outlaws left their spawn. They killed Lastro, and if Lep's gone too, Outlaws are in major trouble. This is meters away from getting full capped. New York are there. They have the blade. Outlaws gotta hope this rampage really pops off. Doge finally has it. It hits only Yaki, but is it enough? Yaki strikes through 3, even through the anti-heal, and Doge is the last one remaining, not the rookie experience New York, or Outlaws really signed up for, and we're going to game 5 after New York fully captured New Queen Street.
All right, the big headline here, the big cap from New York Excelsior, looking for that second win in their season, the first win in the count, in the Summer Showdown. Lemon, one of the things that's most important here is that Doge, having to move out and engage, actually used his shout a little bit too early. No one else got the overhealth. No one had the additional speed they needed to kite that blade, and that made everyone easy targets for Yaki. New York Excelsior, we also need to bear in mind, these guys were criminally bad at push. Unbelievable. They might as well have uninstalled the game, turned off their PCs and their monitors when going to push previously. But with Gesture and Undyne now leading this team from the back room, they seem to have a better understanding of the tempo, and they know when they can move forward to exploit these weaknesses.
Brains were turned on, but not only that, factory reset. New York's macro looking fabulous on New Queen Street. We're going to game 5, and we'll see you there. It's the first Game 5 of the Summer Showdown, and possibly, truly, I can't cast a curse more than I already have. And you as well, by the way. But we could also see our first reverse sweep, and this would be the most on-brand Houston, New York situation we've ever seen.
Oh yeah, this is pretty cursed, Lemon. The Warlocks are eating today, let's put it that way. We've got ourselves a substitution. Doge has gone over to sit on the bench for a while, while Dante, usually the Doomfist maestro of Houston Outlaws, has joined for our final control map. Interestingly, Dante wasn't in for our first control map of Nepal, but for Oasis, Dante is present. And while it may just be to try and, like rejig the mental after what was just an embarrassing push map and mental shattering fumble on Dorado, you could also see maybe a little bit of Dante playing with Doomfist, though to be honest, I kind of doubt it. Doomfist's got an interesting matchup against the Junker Queen where you can interrupt both the Rampage and the Carnage by using a short-charged punch, and in this patch, it also takes only 90 damage rather than 100 to charge up his fist, which is an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah, I've heard through the grapevine that they're trading up on Junker Queen roles, so that's what I'm kind of expecting, although I know we have it so ingrained in our brains that Dante has only played Doomfist. I mean, his name starts with D. It all makes sense, right? But with at least Houston are following this 2 strikes you're out system of Doge had his chances, and now we ain't gonna beef this Game 5, or we're just, we made all these changes for good reason. So let's start off Summer Showdown on the right foot. Speaking of starting Summer Showdown, each team only plays 6 matches, by the way. So that's what defines whether you qualify into the Summer Showdown or not. So that's why every match matters. No previous result is going to impact.
And it matters even more for New York Excelsior, Lemon, because Houston have a little bit of a cushion when it comes to getting into the playoffs with 9-3 as their scoreline. New York Excelsior, on the other hand, not so much. 1-11. It's been a miserable season. It has not been fun at all for the New York fans. However, the fun may start here. Pelican has moved over onto their signature Echo. Remember, that previous Rookie of the Year accolade off of a huge season as the Echo of Atlanta Reign. And remember, Yaki, if he goes too deep here, he will be incredibly beamable if he gets under 100 HP.
And it was always kind of Pelican's identity that through the Genji meta, he always preferred the Echo as this sort of pseudo counter to Genji, and would always rather fit in these shoes. And he tried some Genji throughout this series, but it does feel like Yaki is the more proficient one. So far, you have this alleyway control from Excelsior, but as soon as targets get low, Pelican is in the right place at the right time to finish them off, and almost just kills Flora there solo if he didn't have to reload, I think. So only have actually 4-on-4 because Lep's dead too, and so is Flora. So Houston have capped, but really for how long are they going to hold it?
All right, Kellen falls on down. Remember that one of the things that's interesting here about the Echo pick is that Kellen, because they will have one less target on the ground to hit with the Carnage and a target that's much harder to hit with the thrown knife, there's going to be less overall healing generated by the wound drain that the Junker Queen gets, and that's going to make her a touch more vulnerable.
Yeah, you always got to be careful, but somehow these tanks are living with 25% HP, and I'm just gripping my chair like, oh god, and here goes Kellen into the hallway, throws a knife into Dante, brings him back into the tango he was invited for. And New York still hold on the alleyway, or kind of this side road with the mini pack, and point is still for Outlaws. So New York wanting to force the flip, waiting for their cooldowns though, and all of this time is favoring the Outlaws at the end of the day. Pelican's forced to drop down the hole to maybe fly back up later, so I wonder if New York want to take this fight now that Pelican's missing, and as soon as Pelican re-emerges, Flora shoots him in the face, and that is going to be the counter to hit scans and flying characters. So with this advantage, you start the rally from Gangnam Jin, and you make sure you don't lose any more members, as Outlaws will have to reset, but they stalled this out to 70+%, so still very good for Outlaws on their first fight.
Yeah, Kellen going very big there as well. I think in the end it also kind of came down to Dante missing that Carnage axe on those players who were penned up in that tiny little area. Okay, sometimes the headshots just happen, Lemon. In that case, it certainly did. A pair of overclocks are available, and Pelican wants to just emerge from behind. Big flank here, and Flora does not expect it. Just
Pelican the assassin, but the sound barrier starts for Lep and the friends of the Houston Outlaws, and Merritt is overclocking, but doesn't have too many targets to shoot at, and really is just running away from the Yaki blade. So both teams run away from each other without actually killing anything, by the way. Meanwhile, you got an overclock from Flora, who's looking at the back line, uses the disruptor shot to stop the route of exit from the Houston Outlaws, who surge forward and lose both their supports to a rampage by Kellen. So New York only have to just bunker down on the point and flip it back. Oh, or actually they still have it. It was Outlaws that almost flipped it.
Yeah, Outlaws almost flipped, but Gangnam Jin remaining alive was super important because you could still hand out those armor packs, and all damage done to Houston Outlaws at that point was permanent because there were no healers remaining. Now, moving into these areas with the Echo can be a touch more difficult because you're moving into a more charged Sojourn. The duplicates available. Double Junker Queen time, baby!
That's what I love to see. One axe into Kellen. He heads for the hills, and the double shout. I mean, this could be kind of meta for the Outlaws. They do lose Lastro, though, and they don't have Lep, so I don't know about this one. New York are now going to re-engage in a 5-on-3. No healing for the Outlaws, so they just fall like flies. And New York have actually kept the point this whole time, so this is last fight territory coming up.
And considering that New York didn't even really use anything to counter that, that is a monumental fumble from the Houston Outlaws. In that tiny room with double shout and the double axe, that should have been Houston Outlaws all the way. Alas, now 7% away and New York Excelsior from taking the first control map again. If Dante was the secret source, I'm not feeling the picante right now, Lemon.
Disruptor shot right in the middle of the Outlaws as they just try to heal Dante back up. The rally starts for New York, 99% and overtime. Houston now would have to later rally. Maybe the extra research will help, but Florida strikes through the heart of Merritt. A 5-on-4 now ensues for the Excelsior, and Outlaws are using a rally to run away, but they're barely keeping any presence on the point, and this is just done and dusted. We're going into round 2 with New York leading the way.
And critically in that fight, Lemon, New York Excelsior did a really good job of kiting off the point, knowing that because it wasn't 99-99 and they had their own overtime in session, that Outlaws had to stay on that point and New York could just get out of the grasp of Dante, get out of the grasp of Pelican super easily just by kiting back now and then, giving themselves a little bit more space and breathing room to find openings, just like we saw Flora get onto Merritt. Coming into this matchup, Merritt's Sojourn stats were incredible, much better than Flora's, but during this particular map, Flora seems to be doing a little bit better when it comes to the Sojourn.
Yeah, that's made a big difference. Pelican's trying to be kind of this assassin, but there's just so much health to get through, including on top of the shout and everything that can just be used at any time. So Pelican's back on the Genji, needs a bit more speed to finish off these kills, and Echo not as swift. High ground kind of being fought for, Houston giving it up. They're dropping and trying to coalesce back together. You have Merritt on the high ground alone, assassinated by Yaki. He also finds Lastro by himself. Lep has to go back to assist. He got the double boops. Yaki has this disruptor shot from Flora at his feet, so Houston couldn't really be aggressive off of that either, and New York get the point first.
Yeah, that was a really smart peeling disruptor shot there from Flora to make sure that Lastro could not get in and start brawling with the Genji at the range that you want, because you'd be suffering too much damage and too much slowing, which make you easier for Yaki to hit. Also, Ansumji did a really good job in that fight of booping Houston Outlaws off of the high ground that they invested heavily for and make sure that all of that was wasted.
Oh, Kellum tried to hit him with the surprise move. Didn't get anyone with a knife. Lastro has to be careful on how much he frontlines there, trying to block some of the damage in. New York have isolated Pelican, who's already half health and bleeding to death. And you see the rest of Outlaws tried to run after Pelican to save him, and Dante gets punished too. So this has been 2 flawless fights for New York in this round 2.
See, previously I'd lambasted the idea of playing the corners to try and get that carnage because it means you have to use your shout to disengage, but it's different when you've got a Sojourn on your team, Lemon, because then the Sojourn can put down the disruptor shot behind you, and it means that if Houston want to chase down Kellen after that risky play, they've got to brave the disruptor shot, which is going to be usually just put right in that choke, and there it is. Bisects the team, cuts off Pelican.
Outlaws were a little bit less healthy, but it's fine as long as they don't die because they need to get Rally and Sound Barrier up, but Yaki has the blade first. How quickly is he going to want to use it? Pelican kind of already harassing the supports. Gangnam Jin is holding on to Rally preciously, but he got the Rally first from Gangnam Jin. Wasn't able to save Kellen, but maybe it'll help Yaki finish off this fight. He uses the blade, but it's countered by the left Sound Barrier as they all disperse and try to use their utility to boop Yaki away. He still lives, but without Kellen, New York are just going to struggle to have a good frontal force against Houston. And eventually, Outlaws finish off the fight. It will take up to, 95+% to flip it over. So Houston have to play perfect from here on out, or else they lose.
They do have to play perfect. I want to see New York Excelsior use maybe an overclock here to try and bait more ults out of Houston Outlaws than they can afford to spend in this next battle. If they can get out both the Rampage and the Blade, New York Excelsior will be well set for the next battle afterwards. And there's the Rampage.
Oh, Rampage only hits Yaki and Kellen though, but the follow-up is what was deadly. Gangnam Jin just immediately falls over, and at least New York were able to shout and speed their way out of the fight quite quickly, so only one kill for Houston.
Yeah, that doesn't feed over a huge amount of ult charge there either, which Lep and Lastro desperately want to deal with Kellen's own Rampage. Now Kellen, a much maligned tank who's had himself a terrible season so far, could grasp New York Excelsior's second win of the season and the first win of this Summer Showdown.
How does Kellen want to use this Rampage, though? Everyone from Houston is so split, some on the high ground, but now everyone's on the low ground, so Kellen's Rampage has to be used in the best way possible if New York want to win the fight to get this game 5, to get the reverse sweep. And here is Kellen already asking a question to the Outlaws, and the Rampage goes through, only hits left, not ideal. Houston fight back, it's the blade from Pelican, slices down Yaki, goes for more, as Gangnam Jin's job has just been to protect Flora, to see if they can have a responding pick, but New York are giving up hope, and they head for the hills.
My guy Kellen just lost to a bush. No. It got in the way of the, it was just a vertical partition too far, and remember Kellen couldn't make it up into the covered alcove area with the Rampage, and so the AoE only hit Lep. Now Houston Outlaws in this final fight, they have both of their support ultimates so they can control the tempo. Gangnam Jin needs 9% more before their own rally. If Outlaws strike first, they can strike a killing blow.
There's the final fight. Control for Houston Outlaws. The rally starts from Lastro first, ready to layer the left Sound Barrier after that, but Lastro immediately dies. The burst and the focus fire from New York is so strong. They're gonna rally with Gangnam Jin. Left uses the Sound Barrier, but Outlaws finally get a kill, but they're just lacking in heals without Lastro. It's all about working as a unit, and Houston have to do this one last time, even with a last-minute substitute in Game 5. Pelican eats the right click of Yaki, and the blade! We needed Yaki to put the cape on and save New York, and he might have just done that at the last second. Houston have a chance to touch, though, and they will return in a second. It's 99-99, but round point and the series on the line. New York are on the point. Houston have Rampage in a few more seconds. No ult remain for New York, and Houston are bunkering down. They've lost merit. Houston waited too long to make a decision, and now they're frantic and they're panicking. But here's the Rampage from Dante, hit Kellen and Yaki. Kellen's back on the Doomfist. Floor's got 100 charge. He has to make this count. He sees Lep on the high ground at 1 HP, and this is the last kill that New York need, and the brooms are out. New York, they know how to win. They take the Game 5 against Houston.
Who else but Yaki is gonna slice through your pick'ems? First it was Mayhem, and now no one expected this. New York Excelsior winning in 3-2 fashion after 2 maps that made Houston Outlaws seem unbeatable. An attack on Dorado that made Houston Outlaws seem inassailable. This outlaw fortress in the hills of Texas, who dares to walk up to it? Unfortunately, it's the Outlaws who sallied out and let themselves be victims of attrition, be worn down on their own overtime rounds of Dorado, and then New Queen Street just shattered them completely.
A team that went 1-11, released Myungbum, released their head coach. We're going through a lot of changes, clearly in a development form, and needing to go through some kind of evolution, going through desperate changes for for this moment to finally matter. These teams only play 6 matches. Every one of them count. Now, you wish you did it cleaner, but a win's a win. And for New York, those don't come too often. And you just saw in their faces how much this meant to them, because they don't win often, as I said. And the fact that no matter the substitutions that Houston did, they could not fix the mental booming that had occurred. But a big congrats to the New York Excelsior, who just made adaptations throughout the series, whether having Kellen play the Junker Queen like a Doomfist, almost, and kind of these isolated 1v5 moves as like kind of bait, to really coalescing together as a team. And even the desk said at the beginning, New York have the quality players, but it was about, can they actually play the meta just as well as everyone else?
The talent is there, and the talent is here in our player of the match, the man who boomed all of your pick'ems. I started this series, Lemon, talking about Yaki as a Sisyphean character, pointlessly rolling this boulder up the hill again and again, never to complete, but he has been promoted from Sisyphean tragedy to Achillean hero. Yaki led the soldiers to a final victory. They've been 1-11 for so long. Their only win, I believe, was against the Vancouver Titans, and even that could have been a little bit risky. However, Yaki today, he says, oh, it's a Genji meta, huh? Daddy's home.
I hate that you said that. I'm glad you did it, not me. And, you know, Houston had already started to band-aid some of their problems, whether it was, you know, their tank flexibility, they signed Doge. The fact that, you know, they needed a Lucio player, they signed Lep. But Pelican is still in that same identity of not wanting, or not at the level of Genji that people like Yaki are. And I think it's been, you're seeing how the Dragon Blade kills are so low because of just the amount of resources that exist in these fights. And you saw a bit of frustration out of Yaki. He always keeps his emotions cool, but I can imagine playing Genji in this meta is a nightmare, and every decision has to be calculated. And it felt like just the experience from Yaki on this hero was just that much more than Pelican. So I wonder, are Houston going to want to bring Pelican, just really put all the time into Pelican developing into a great Genji? Because that's what's really important in this meta. Genji is not really as interchangeable as people think. Or are they going to try and fit a comp around Pelican's Echo? I really don't know what's next for Houston, but the changes are coming.
Yeah, honourable mention to Kellen as well. It's been a bad season for him, and to be fair, started off bad on Midtown and Nepal, but within this particular series as well, Kellen turned around into a much more aggressive tank, and that was needed to actually get the commanding shout onto Yaki when he's on an aggressive off angle, because that's a one-frame AoE. Once you cast it, if you miss it, it's gone, and you can't do it again. It's not like a sound barrier where you can travel after casting it and still give it to members who are maybe slightly further away. So Kellen did a really good job of adapting to this Junker Queen and really finding ways to draw even with both Doge and Dante. So huge props to Kellen.
Well, two teams that didn't have to adapt their roster at all are the Dallas Fuel versus the LA Gladiators. That will be our next match, but we're going to throw it to a break and let our desk analyze the pro and throws that happened in this series. We'll see you after this.
겐지도 원이야, 겐지도 원이야, 왼쪽 겐지 원이야, 겐지 원이야.
야 겐지 볼래 겐지 볼래
겐지 원, 겐지 원.
겐지 확인.
겐지 원, 겐지 원.
야 킨도원 킨도원
루시오도
루시오
원이야.
중계
루시오도
깼어
원이야.
중계 깼어
나이스, 씨발. 루시오 먼저, 루시오.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Upper Deck, the official trading card of the Overwatch League. And by TeamSpeak, the official voice supplier of the Overwatch League.
Welcome to Game Break, everybody. I'm here joined now by Flora from New York, Excelsior. Flora, congratulations on the win. What a match, what a reverse sweep. So I want to ask you, because I feel like we saw two different teams. First half of New York Excelsior, and then there's the latter half of New York Excelsior, and I honestly think you guys were a totally different team. So my first question for you is, what changed for you guys? Like, what sort of changes happened after Dorado for you guys to get that clutch reverse sweep today against Houston Outlaws? 자, 첫 번째 질문은 오늘 일단 승리를 축하드리면서 제가 봤을 때는 좀 다른 뉴욕을 좀 본 것 같아요. 일단 첫 반이나 이제 후반부에 뉴욕이 좀 완전 다른 팀으로 이렇게 본 것 같은데 처음엔 좀 많이 좀 힘들어하는 모습을 보이다가 거의 도라도 이후에 180도 변한 좀 각성한 뉴욕을 본 것 같은데 이 도라도 맵 이후에 좀 어떤 좀 이렇게 팀 간에서 좀 변화가 있었나요?
일단 승리 축하 감사드리고요. 저희가 이제 도라도 전까지 이제 네팔이랑 미드타운 할 때는 약간 좀 저희가 먼저 가기보다는 받아치면서 상대가 사이드 먹는 거를 좀 치는 위주로 했었는데 약간 도라도 때 이기고 나서 이제 저희 코치님이 먼저 저희가 코너 꺾으면서 먼저 치면 좋을 것 같다 해가지고 약간 좀 저희가 먼저 가는 방법을 택한 것 같아요. 그게 좀 잘 먹혔던 것 같아요.
Alright, so I do believe that before Dorado, I would say that we weren't really proactive. We were our playstyle was more reactive, where when Houston Outlaws or when our enemy team was coming in, we sort of wanted to react to their movements, and that's how we carried on the fight. And that didn't really work out. What changed after Dorado, though? After winning that map, our coach said that it would be better for us to take those corners and be more proactive, go in first, and be more aggressive. I think listening to our coach and changing up our playstyle after Dorado into more aggressive playstyle was really effective, and that's how we got the win. And not only that, I think after watching your match today, it does seem like our hitscan players are using a lot more Ashe and Sojourn. What's the reason for these two specific heroes being played more in the current meta? 자, 두 번째 질문은 오늘 좀 보니까 또 경기들을 보니까 히트스캔 선수들이 애쉬랑 소전을 좀 굉장히 좀 더 많이 사용을 하는 것 같은데 애쉬랑 소전 이 두 영웅들이 좀 더 이번 현 메타에 더 많이 쓰여지는 이유가 있을까요?
뭔가 이번 메타에는 메인 딜러들이 약간 기동성보다는 약간 딜을 많이 해주는 게 중요하다고 생각하는 것 같아서 약간 애쉬를 쓸 때는 다이너마이트나 약간 폭딜로 본대에 좀 많이 쳐주는 형식으로 하는 것 같고 소전은 이제 1호 약간 저희 본대 싸움 도와주면서 레일건으로 변수 보고 그런 게 좀 다른 메인 딜러 캐릭터들보다 좋은 것 같아서 많이 쓰는 것 같아요.
Alright, I think that in the current meta for hitscan or any DPS players and DPS heroes, it's really important to output as much damage as possible. So for Ashe, Ashe has a really good dynamite, so that gives a lot of DPS. And not only that, of course, it's really Ashe is just clicks or whatever she outputs damage is really fast and has a lot of explosive damage. Sojourn as well has her E ability, and also the railgun has a lot more damage as well. So I think those two heroes are sort of very well geared for the meta currently. All right, Flora, that is it for the question. Thank you so much for your time. And again, big congratulations on today's win. 자, 이걸로 인터뷰 마치겠고요. 플로라 선수 오늘 승리 너무나도 축하드립니다. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
바이바이. Woo!
A New York Excelsior fan right here.
Just when we thought the Houston Outlaws weren't the Outlaws anymore, they give us this. What did we just watch, Costa? What was this reverse sweep from New York Excelsior, okay? Like, they had never won a push map.
And then they completely finished a push map. New York Excelsior's first push map they've won the entire season ever was in a reverse sweep against the Houston Outlaws, and they fully finished the map.
What just happened? That's unbelievable.
Well, let's go first.
Let's just get it right.
No, let's go first. Dojan Lep, welcome to the Houston Outlaws.
Welcome.
It's important for you to experience this for the first time now, early on in your career, because it's going to happen again, because it always does. Every time we think that they've gotten over the hump, somehow it comes back. And, you know, honestly, the Houston Outlaws in these first couple of maps, they looked incredibly comfortable. As Flora was saying, the Houston Outlaws were setting the tempo. They were the ones playing aggressively. They were using their commanding shout actually very early, and they were running over the Excelsior before they had an answer. And, you know, Midtown did not look close. Like, this was a very